Well, first, let me begin by thanking you for inviting me. And I really appreciated coming right after Commissioner McGrath, because I agree with everything he said. And as an American, I wish we had somebody in our government saying something as forcefully. I wish we had somebody in our Congress putting forward ideas of the kind that the European Commission has been putting forward. I don't have to convince you that what he said and what I was planning to say about the importance of timely and accurate information, the importance of that for our democracy. It's also critically important for the economy. And I want to begin by putting this a little bit in perspective. The reason that we have higher standards of living today than we did 250 years ago is simple. For centuries before the end of the 18th century, standards of living had been stagnant. Almost no change. And then suddenly, around 250 years ago, they started to soar, to increase. And what was the basis of that? It was, I think, the Enlightenment. The core idea of the Enlightenment was that we could understand nature, the world around us, that we could rationally think about social organization. It didn't have to be what it was that we inherited. We could rethink our social organization. But underlying both the inquiry into nature and into inquiry into social organization was a seeking of the truth, trying to understand what was truthful, and ways of coming to societal consensus about the truth. Part of the innovation in terms of social organization was an appreciation of the rule of law. And part of the notion of the rule of law has to be some sense of accountability, of ascertaining what is going on. You can't have a rule of law if you don't have any way of knowing what is going on. You have to, and this set of institutions that we created to hold officials, everybody in our society accountable, has overall worked well for 250 years. Right now, in the United States, those principles are being challenged. And I'll come back and talk about that a little later. But what I want to emphasize is how important these notions of truth, accuracy, ways of society ascertaining the truth are for the functioning of our society, for the functioning of our economy, and for our ability today to have such a higher standard of living, life expectancy, than we did 250 years ago. Obviously, I don't have to convince you in this audience about the role of the media in bringing these in investigative reporting, in holding people accountable, in transmission, not only in the generation of knowledge, but the transmission. The media, in that sense, is a public good. We all benefit from having a better information ecosystem. We all suffer when we don't have a good information ecosystem. And because of that, because it's a public good, in some ways it has to be publicly supported. It's not a conventional private good. where if I eat something, I benefit from it, nobody else benefits from it. In the case of a good information ecosystem supported by a good media, our entire society benefits. And one of the insights of economics over the last 50 years has been that, in general, in the absence of public support, and when I say public support, I mean financial support as well as broader support, there will be an insufficient supply of public goods. Now, for a long time, we succeeded with limited public support of the media because of you might say, an accidental marriage between advertising and the production and dissemination of news. It worked. It wasn't if you had asked an economic theorist, does this make sense? They would have said, probably not, but it seemed to work, and it served our society. There was a complementarity. Good media attracted eyes attracted advertising. So there was a logic to it, but it was not a perfect logic. But that logic, in some sense, in the last quarter century, has begun to break down. And it's been broken down actually began more than a quarter century ago, in several ways. First of all, people like Murdoch discovered that you can get more eyes by entertainment and not having accurate news than you can by having accurate news. And so you have Fox News in the United States deliberately making decisions not to accurately report because it would get more eyes. So the link between truth, accuracy, and the function of the media and advertising got broken because there was an alternative way of getting more eyes. And then came something even more invidious, and that was the social media. The social media got eyes in the process of search and engagement. Engagement often, in the case of some of the social media, through enragement. So rather than having just entertainment, it became one of societal polarization. And the object wasn't truth or dissemination of the truth, it was getting, again, more eyes, but for the objective not through a mechanism of advancing truth in any sense of the term, but simply by discovering, partly through the work of economists and psychologists, of what gets people more enthralled, what gets more engagement. So behavioral economics and psychology discovered that you could do a better job of doing it by feeding things that get people really outraged. But there was another component of it. It's not just social media. Search engines also attracted eyes, and they got eyes partly by being a place where people could get news of what was going on. And they decided that it was much cheaper to steal information, to steal news, than to produce it themselves. And that began a massive theft of intellectual property. And the legal frameworks of intellectual property, written 100 years ago, for the most part, were not up to the task. The issue in the United States, we have what was a provision called fair use, it was designed for academia to be able to use ideas from others for purposes of research, small snippets to quote. But it wasn't a business model. But the search engines made a business model out of stealing information from those who were producing it. I know the word stealing is a little harsh, but I think it's the accurate term for what has gone on. All of this is going to become worse with artificial intelligence. And it is already becoming worse, and it's something that all over the world, people are trying to get a better assessment of where this will lead. I say it's worse for several reasons. Most importantly, already, if you want to know what's going on, you ask AI, and it will synthesize all the sources of information and come up with maybe not the best news story, but a summary of what is going on. And so, at least in the context of the search engines, you could see where the original source was. And while most people didn't go back to the original source, they got that little snippet was all they really wanted to know. And so you took what was really a benefit. In the case of AI, typically you don't even know where it comes from. And in some cases, the AI itself may not know where it got that particular piece of information. So the ability of the producers of the original information to get compensated for that, to attract eyes for advertising, has been undermined even more. The implication of this, of course, should be very clear. If incentives to produce information are attenuated by the theft of information, by the fact that you don't know what where the information came from, you're not even referred to the original source, then there will be very little incentive to produce good information. There used to be an expression in computer science called GIGO, garbage in, garbage out. If you don't have a timely and accurate information going in to the AI that it can process, there can't be good information coming out. There's no way it can make up information about what's going on its own. So we are, as a society, at a point of a crisis in our information ecosystem. The incentives to produce good information are being attenuated. But it's even worse than that, because AI has also increased the possibility of mis and disinformation. I mentioned before that there are incentives for entertainment, incentives, especially in social media, for engagement through enragement. And that kind of engagement through enragement can be enhanced by mis and disinformation. And in fact, in the area of advertising, deepfakes have proven profitable for companies like Meta. That somebody doing an advertising with a deepfake saying that this person a very successful person recommends that you buy that product can help sell the product and generate revenue for the social media. it's virtually impossible for an ordinary citizen to be able to distinguish between the deep fake and truth. Making matters worse, in the United States in the mid-1990s, we passed a law that Section 230 of the Childhood Pornography Act that removed accountability for the social media, for the platforms. The argument at the time were these new technologies were nascent, they needed encouragement, and accountability would would dampen their success. I thought it was wrong at the time, but let me say, I was chairman of the Council of Economic Advisors at the time. This critically important piece of legislation was never discussed within the White House, within the economics team in the White House. It was a childhood pornography bill. What do we do with, who's against childhood, who's in favor of childhood pornography? And it was a little provision put in the bill. Congress was discussing it, and no one actually had a discussion of the economic, political, and social consequences of Section 230. Now, 25, 30 years later, we know the severe consequences. It's no longer a nascent industry. We know the algorithms act just like editorial services. Just because it's digitalized doesn't mean it's doing editorial, providing editorial services. And there is no justification for this lack of accountability. Yet, this lack of accountability has had these disastrous consequences in terms of, as Commissioner McGrath talked about, encouraging, facilitating mis and disinformation, which pollutes the information ecosystem, harming all of our society. The consequence, of course, of all this is that with a polluted information ecosystem, there's less trust, not only in the media, but also more broadly in our society. Economists over the last 15, 20 years have come to appreciate how important is trust for the functioning of our society and for our functioning of our economy. That you can't really have a well-functioning economy without trust. And so you see what is happening now in the United States, a vicious circle, a more polarized society where you can't even agree on the truth. You can't function as a polity. It's a dystopia. And a dystopia where we can see very visibly in the last few months the country destroying the foundation of its own economic success. I said the Enlightenment was the basis of prosperity over the last 250 years, and that was based on science, and there's a massive attack on science in our universities. And a massive attack, I talked about the importance of the rule of law in the functioning of our society, and there's a massive undermining of the rule of law, both domestically, but also internationally, and that means it's going to affect Europe and people all over the world. Now, the title of my talk was supposed to be, how many minutes do I have? Okay. What was Road to Freedom, Economics in the Good Society and the Implications for the Press. And I want to spend just a few minutes on that, addressing the issue of what can be done. I want to first put into perspective that, we all say that we value freedom, but even in America, which thinks of itself as where, the American Revolution was about freedom, there isn't a full understanding of what is entailed. The critical idea that I try to exposit in the book is that one person's freedom can be another person's, what I call unfreedom. That we are in a integrated society, and what happens to one can affect others. There's no absolutes in this world. As Isaiah Berlin, who was the great philosopher at Oxford, put it, he said, freedom for the wolves has often meant death for the sheep. So the freedom to pollute the information ecosystem takes away the rest of our freedom. It pollutes, it means that we have to spend more money to unpollute. If there's more disinformation, we have to work harder to disentangle what is going on. If there's no accountability, then there will be more mis and disinformation. So the question is, what can be done about it? In the last few minutes, I want to just mention a few important ideas. The first is accountability is absolutely essential. That's why I say Section 230, what Commissioner McGrath talked about, is absolutely essential. What Europe is doing, I think, is a move in the right direction. And I want to encourage you to continue moving in that way. You will be under a lot of pressure from the United States not to do that. The United States view is, not the United States, the current president's view is that digital taxes, laws that restrain, regulate in any way American companies, tech companies, are an unfair trade practice. They're not. They are essential actions which Europe has to do to preserve its own democracy. And that's more important than selling more cars to the United States. One has to prioritize, and my view is very strongly that preserving democracy, civil rights, human rights is more important and worth having a trade war over. By the way, as you always know, President Trump has been called Taco, that Trump always gives in to so you don't have to, in the end, you probably don't have to worry as much as the noise might indicate. It's important in your discussions to think about ways in which one can both signal and screen good information. The ideas in the theory of economics of information was that you have to distinguish between good and bad information, and that two of the mechanisms for doing that are screening and signaling, and strengthening the ways in which that can be done is critical. And finally, one of the things that I think is very important, and one of the sources of our societal polarization today is our high level of inequality. But inequalities in the control of the media may be even more important than inequalities in money. That in terms of shaping our society, how we shape the information ecosystem, what people come to believe, the narratives of our society are absolutely critical in the functioning of our society. And if there is concentration in that, we won't have a well-functioning democracy. So the media is important, but again, as Commissioner McGrath pointed out, it's important that it be a diverse media, an inclusive media. Those are bad words in America now. You can't use the word diversity, inclusion, equity, but I think they're actually good words. That if democracy is to flourish, we can't have concentrations of power in any important dimension of our society. So what is at stake here and what you're talking about today is more, I would say, more than what Commissioner McGrath talked about. It is not just the media in which the state, it's democracy, it's our economy, it's our prosperity. And that's why these kinds of discussions about how to do that, how do you achieve this in today's polarized world is so important. Thank you.